global security at the Henry Jackson Society. And Rory Stewart just then, he wanted a more imaginative approach from Barack Obama in terms of how we deal, or how he deals with North Africa and all the rest of it. You've noticed a change, certainly, in the rhetoric, George.
Yeah, well, there's been a remarkable change. It is remarkable how far we've come. I mean, you'll recall during his Cairo speech in 2009, this was a man who went out of his way to acknowledge the controversy of democracy promotion, who said explicitly that no government should ever be imposed or can be imposed on one country by another, and who, I'm afraid, stood by whilst the regime of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad machine-gunned pro-democracy protesters in 2009. And what we see now is a man who has really started to acknowledge the importance of a values-led foreign policy, and I think it's a very interesting shift.
But isn't it always the pendulum? I mean, isn't that what we see happen? George Bush starts being isolationist and takes us then into Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama clearly reluctant to take his country into another full-scale war until that tipping point comes. That's just what happens, isn't it?
Well, I think that one could say that these men are mugged by reality. I think that might be a bit much, but it certainly is true to say that the idea that you can come into office as president of the United States of America and just stand back from the rest of the world is a false assumption. I think what we've seen in the pro-democracy uprisings in the Middle East is that this notion that somehow we can rely on stable dictatorships to safeguard our interests and our energy supplies has been shown to be erroneous as well. So that is, I think, partly what lies behind this.
How would you read both men's approach to the Middle East, specifically Israel, and the question of a new Palestinian state? We heard David Cameron praise Obama's speech at the weekend as being bold and visionary, where he talked about Israel going back to the pre-1967 borders and land rearrangement there. Of course, that would have more emphasis if there were peace talks going on at the moment. Will this just get lost?
Well, I think that's the point. It's all very well and good for the international community to say this is what an end state needs to look like. But with the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, having joined with Hamas, which denies Israel's right to exist, and with Benjamin Netanyahu in no mood for compromise, I think that until we see some movement in that regard, this isn't going anywhere.
George Grant, thanks very much indeed. Thanks for joining us here. We can cross now to our correspondent, Louise.